Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. Dr. Margaret Toscano gives a summary of her essay in the Gospel Topics series book. So we're going to talk more about 6 of the counterpoints she has that are different than the essay in the LDS Gospel Topics series. So it's a fantastic conversation, and you should definitely go out and buy this book, LDS Gospel Topics series by Matt Harris and Newell Bringhurst. Fantastic book. So anyway, back to our conversation. And then I know you also wanted to share the 6 points. So
yeah, I did, because I felt like I
hadn't
hadn't made those very clear. So I wrote down the notes to make sure that I didn't, somehow digress and then get off my points, right? So maybe I can do the same thing where I can kind of summarize them and then we could talk about each one of them individually. But I think that maybe I need to restate that in the Church Gospel Topics essay on Joseph Smith, Women in the Temple, their central thesis is that that some of the words of Joseph Smith, when you look at them, especially his speeches to the Relief Society in 1842, he gave a series of speeches that he uses language that sounds very much like priesthood language, and that he's saying that women are going to get priesthood. And in the church essay, they say, well, really, this is not true.
These are not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah, these are not. If it seems like he's saying that, he really isn't.
Right.
He's really not saying what you think he's saying there. And in fact, their thesis is that Joseph Smith, his views on women in priesthood are exactly the same as leaders today. Okay, and that's where I disagree with them.
Right.
And
Jonathan would probably agree with you
and
there.
I think Jonathan agrees with me on that.
Yeah.
He just doesn't think that Joseph Smith gave women offices or keys, and I think he did. So again, that's kind of where. So I think Jonathan and I agree that no, Joseph Smith wasn't the same. It was different, right?
Would you say that there's the term proof texting, where you take a scripture out of context? Is that essentially what the essay is doing with Joseph Smith's words? Is proof texting Joseph Smith to shoehorn it into how we believe today?
I think they are, although I don't put any malice on it. I'm not saying that they have bad motives or anything. I think they're convinced that he really didn't mean ecclesiastical church priesthood. So they say in there, Joseph Smith never gave women either Aaronic or Melchizedek priesthood. And I disagree with that. And maybe that's where Jonathan and I would disagree too.
Okay.
He would say Joseph Smith gave them the spiritual power and authority, but he didn't give them Melchizedek or Aaronic. And I think that's even more important than just saying offices. So I believe that Joseph Smith felt, from everything I look at, that he felt that the endowment and the second anointings gave women, as well as men, the fullness of the Aaronic and the Melchizedek priesthood, which he would say was not different than the Aaronic and priesthood in the church, but maybe it had a different function, or that women went through a different route. I mean, he didn't live long enough to completely explain everything he did, right? I mean, if you think about it, he gave those speeches to the Relief Society in March of 1842. Emma Smith was anointed to the fullness of the priesthood in 1843, which is about when they started giving the endowment, fall of 1843. And then what? He's killed in June of 1844.
Right.
So that's not even a full
while
year.
He's running for president.
While he's doing all of those other things, right? And so it's not even a full year. So he never really totally developed it. And of course, back to the question of proof texting, I know some people will say, I'm doing the same thing. Oh, you're just picking out stuff that you like and emphasizing that. You can always accuse that. I mean, I have tried to put my ideas in a context. And so the 6 points I make are, I'm saying that they said that Joseph Smith never did anything that shows that priesthood language was anything more than kind of referring to the kind of sealing or the kind of the family relationships of the temple. But I'm saying I think he said things and did things that give a context for those speeches to the Relief Society, where, and the speeches to the Relief Society, a couple of the startling statements are, he says to the women, I'm going to make you a kingdom of priests, as in Paul's day, as in Enoch's day. So this phrase, I'm going to make you a kingdom of priests. And he also says to the women that he wants the Relief Society to be organized and move in the order of the ancient priesthood. So, I mean, those are pretty strong. Mm-hmm. So the church essay says, well, it doesn't mean what it seems like it means. He kind of was using these terms loosely to refer to temple ordinances, but those have nothing to do with ecclesiastical or church priesthood, or they don't bestow Aaronic and Melchizedek. So then my 6 points say, well, here are six kind of major areas where I think he both said and did things that show that he was serious about women having real priesthood, and that he in fact felt like that the church could not be organized properly if women didn't have a priesthood function in the church. Now, what he eventually saw that to mean, he never lived to make that clear. Did he think they should be apostles? Well, I think they should be, but I don't, there's no statement by Joseph Smith that says that.
Right.
Right. But he did. So I'll go through my 6 things, and we can come back and talk about that. He also said to the women in those Relief Society, he said, I give the key to you. So there's been all this, debate. What did it mean by Joseph Smith giving the women a key? Was it just, again, kind of this nice little metaphor, or was it that he's turning some kind of priesthood key to them?
Yeah.
Like, here's the priesthood key for women.
And remind me, was it B.H. Roberts that changed that?
Yeah,
quote?
B.H. Roberts, and actually probably also even before him, and suddenly then my mind will go blank. But B.H. Roberts changed the language in the history of the church, that in the original, Joseph Smith said, I now turn the key to you women, and things are going to get a lot better for you now that I've turned this key to you. That's a paraphrase. But he does say, I turn the key to you. B.H. Roberts changed, I turn the key in your behalf.
Right.
And I think that's very significant.
Right.
Then the other change that was made was that in Joseph Smith's speeches, it was that the Relief Society should be organized in the order of the Holy Priesthood, in the order. And in B.H. Roberts, he said the Relief Society will be organized by the order of the priesthood, kind of like the men are going to organize them. So a big difference, saying the Relief Society is going to have the structure of the organization of the priesthood, as opposed to the men are going to organize you. So I think those are very significant, and B.H. Roberts knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And in my article, I show how women at the time of B.H. Roberts had a private sort of argument about that, because 3 major women who were in Nauvoo and endowed by Joseph, I think they make it very clear that they believe they'd been given the real priesthood through the endowment. And that's Eliza R. Snow, Bathsheba Smith, and Sarah Kimball.
Okay.
They're in my article, I have these really strong statements by all of them.
And she was the wife of Heber Kimball, right? Sarah Kimball.
Suddenly, I don't think Sarah was.
Oh.
I should have looked that up, and
That's
I didn't,
okay.
Rick. Our listeners, they can look it up and find
exactly.
out. and all 3 of these women really felt Joseph Smith had given them something very important. Yeah. So anyway, I'll quickly do my 6 areas where I think Joseph, did confer Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthood on women through their endowments. So the first body of evidence I talk about are the contemporary statements he makes, where he gives a context for what he meant by those Relief Society speeches. And that would include also women's reaction to what he said. And that's where I bring in these statements by Bathsheba Smith, Eliza Snow, and Sarah Kimball, where they say, Joseph gave us everything. He gave us every order of priesthood through the temple. So that's the first body, and so I have a lot of quotes from that. The second is this: if you look at the complete discourses to the Relief Society, I mean, the most startling thing where he says, "I'm going to, that you're going to be, be in the order of the priesthood, just like in Enoch's day and Paul's day," referring to these other dispensations, right? But if you look at the whole speeches, I think there's if not just again, picking something out and proof texting, either for or against, I think you can see that he really meant priesthood. And again, that he felt like that he was giving them keys, and that the Relief Society should be this priesthood organization. So that's the first one, are contemporary statements by him and other women. The second thing is the complete text of the whole speeches to the Nauvoo Relief Society. The third one, and here is again maybe where Jonathan and I really disagree, I think that Joseph Smith felt that when Elijah came to restore priesthood, it was not just about sealings in the sense of sealings of families and couples and so forth to each other, but that he meant the sealing powers that were part of the fullness of the Melchizedek priesthood. And I think it's really interesting that Joseph Smith made a statement where he said that the church and the priesthood were not organized correctly until Elijah came. And so I think he saw, and I have a quote here that I could read in a minute if we want to come back to it, that Elijah, the keys of Elijah, were really about the fullness of the Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthood, not just about sealing. So that's the third body. The fourth is all of Joseph Smith's statements that show what he meant by the fullness of the Melchizedek priesthood. And those are important because they show that he didn't see a difference between the fullness of the Melchizedek priesthood as it's in the temple as opposed to the church. He never connected them enough to show how they should function together, but I think theologically he connected them. So that's the fourth. The fifth is Emma Smith's anointing to the fullness of the priesthood on September 28, 1843. And the language is very clear that she was anointed to the fullness of the Melchizedek priesthood. So if you combine that with what Joseph Smith says about what the fullness of the priesthood is, I think it shows that she received real priesthood. It wasn't, something vague. And then the sixth body of evidence is about the quorum of the anointed, and I think that it was an actual priesthood quorum, and women were included in that. So those are my six things: contemporary statements of him and other people, the Nauvoo Relief Society minutes are the second, all of Joseph Smith's statements about the purpose of Elijah and what he brought. The fourth is how he defines the fullness of the Melchizedek priesthood. The fifth, Emma Smith's anointing to the priesthood, and that's important. And it was not just part of the temple ceremony. That was a separate ceremony where she's anointed to the fullness of the priesthood. And the sixth then is this quorum of the anointed. So I go through and I kind of have quotes on all of those. And so I don't think I was clear. I kind of got all discombobulated last time, Rick, and I didn't kind of give my 6 points really clearly. But, and the way I conclude my essay is I say, look, have I absolutely proved that Joseph Smith gave women the Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthood? No, because you can always argue, right? This is what scholars do, right? We always argue about, did that really mean that? What is the context? How many documents do we have to show that, right? So my point is not that I'm absolutely right and the church essay is absolutely wrong. I'm just saying, look, here's a counter argument to show that there is a lot of evidence to show that their conclusion is not right, or at least we should question it. But I try to end on sort of an open-hearted way to say that I'm really glad that they did these essays, because I think they give us an opportunity to talk about these things. And I'm really glad that they took Joseph Smith seriously, because sometimes because of our tendency to focus on the present living prophet, we kind of dismiss some of the statements of Joseph Smith. So I really like it when we take, history seriously.
Oh, definitely.
And theology seriously. Anyway, so I think I've said what I needed to, Rick. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about this further, but those were the points I wanted to clarify from our last interview.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so there's nothing else you want to drill down in on there anymore?
Not right now. I think I kind of got most of my points in there.
Okay. Well, cool. Margaret, every time I talk to you, I'm like, I wish that you would teach a priesthood lesson. I swear I learned so much about priesthood from a woman, and I mean that with all of the most respect, but Just the insights that you have, I think, are just really amazing. And
Oh, thank you, Rick. I think the important thing, though, is that I just wish that we felt free to have more open discussions. You know, I mean, you know, there's not a final word on any of these things, right? These are all areas that we can keep exploring, and, you know, maybe we'll find some new statement by Joseph Smith or somebody else and say, wow, that really gives us a new insight.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Margaret Toscano. Our next conversation with Margaret is going to be our last, so if you haven't signed up for our free newsletter, sign up now at GospelTangents.com/newsletter, and I'll send you a secret link to the final part of our conversation with Dr. Toscano. In our final conversation, we're going to talk about the recent brouhaha of Fiona Givens at the Maxwell Institute, where Fiona recently resigned. I asked Margaret what she thought about some of Fiona's past writings. Oh, wow.
And I have to say, and I don't care if she sees this, that I'm a little mad at her about her chapter. I think her chapter is not, I don't want to use too negative of a word, but since the chapter is called Feminism and the Heavenly Mother, she doesn't quote any Mormon feminist, including myself, in that chapter.
If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, please subscribe for just $5 a month at patreon.com/GospelTangents, and you can hear the entire interview before everybody else. If you'd like to watch the entire video for just $8 a month, you can either subscribe on YouTube, Patreon, or my website, GospelTangents.com. Just click the yellow subscribe button, and I'll add you to our Gospel Tangents Insiders group so that you can see entire videos. For those interested in a PDF transcript, you can subscribe at either Patreon or on my website. For just $10 a month, I'll send you a PDF as soon as it's complete. If you'd like a copy of the paperback as well as a PDF, just sign up for $20 a month at either Patreon or my website, GospelTangents.com. Of course, you can buy individual transcripts at Amazon.com and just do a search for Gospel Tangents interview, and you can see all the things that we have there. Don't forget to support Gospel Tangents with an awesome t-shirt like one of these. You can subscribe at Apple Podcasts at tinyurl.com/GospelTangents. Get our latest updates at Facebook.com/GospelTangents. Also, you can get our Twitter updates at Gospel Tangents. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here we've got more of our great videos. Thanks again.